Welcome to those of you watching on YouTube. This is Blowing Smoke with Twisted Rico. I'm your host, Steve Riccardo. If you want to hear this entire show with intros, outros, and music, please go to Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, etc. Please welcome to the show, J.M. Stevens.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm in the wonderful confines of a Red Roof Inn here in Baton Rouge. Played a show
Yeah,
last night, and yeah, just kind of getting my day rolling here.
I know you're on tour, so thanks for taking the time to talk to us. Before we get to Nowhere to Land and the tour and all that, I wanted to go back, if you don't mind. I think I read that you grew up in Mississippi. Is that true? And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I grew up in a town called West Point. Um, I would say that the closest town that somebody might know is Tupelo.
Good
You, you,
town.
you know where Elvis is from there. Uh, Yeah, and I'm actually playing there on this tour. I'm pretty excited about. I'm playing at the Blues Museum there, so it's always fun to go back. But when I was old enough, I just couldn't wait to leave there. And I heard Austin was cool, so I went and lived in a hotel out in Austin when I was 20. I never thought I would want to go back, but I always enjoy going back to Mississippi. And playing there for people and stuff. It's especially, it's just things that just move a little slower there. It's great in a good
I,
way, you know.
I imagine you had a lot of blues when you're growing up down there.
Well, Howlin' always heard about Howlin' Wolf because he's from West Point,
Oh, yeah, nice.
and he's one of my heroes. But around my house growing up, there wasn't a lot of that playing. I don't even remember there being much of a stereo in my house. Like my mom is a great pianist and more church music and stuff that I would hear. But there was definitely an Elvis contingent in my household growing up, and Johnny Cash and stuff like that my old man was into, and he was always into um, rock and roll, like Bo Diddley and Buddy Holly and stuff like that. So I love all that music. My dad I always heard a story that he would tell me. I got into music. He was like, you can play he wasn't a musician at all. He's like, you can do all you want, but you're never going to top what he did. Is when he was in high school, there was a club called the Whispering Pines in Lowndes County outside of Macon, Mississippi. And Bo Diddley played there. And my old man got on stage and played maracas with Bo Diddley.
Wow, that's
And
cool.
and I always thought it was kind of BS, so it's just one of these stories he made up because he was a big storyteller. But I did find out that it was actually true. I heard it from some other people that were there. He did actually play with Bo Diddley. So he's like, "You're never gonna, you can do all you want, but you're never gonna top that." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're probably right. I'm probably not gonna top that."
I was
You
going to
know,
ask you if you came from a musical family because your brother, Rogers, is a founding member of Blind Melon, right?
that's right.
Yeah,
They were
that
three of the guys are from West Point, one from Columbus, but so there's a lot of music comes from down there.
I didn't realize that Blind Melon was a Mississippi band. I saw them actually at Woodstock '94.
No
Uh,
kidding.
that's
Yeah,
the
I
only
remember
time I
that.
saw. It's the only time I saw them because I worked for A&M Records, and we put out the double album, and a bunch of us got selected to go there and listen to as much as we could. And Blind Melon was one of the bands I remember seeing. They did a good job actually at Woodstock '94. They got the crowd going. They were hot at that time, really hot.
I remember hearing about that, and I was in high school still at the time, and you talk about just being. It just didn't seem real to me to see my brother up there doing this. I'd see him on Saturday Night Live or Letterman and stuff. It's like it just seemed an impossibility, that people that from West Point, that I knew. But it also made it think, oh wow, I can do that. So for better or worse, here I am still plugging away.
Were there other people in your family that were musical besides your brother and you?
Well, my mom is a great singer.
Pianist.
Yeah, and she's an amazing I'd see her singing in the church choir and stuff growing up. She's this incredible soprano, and she still is. And she was it was like a local music troupe thing there in West Point. It was kind of like it would put on plays and shows, people in the town. Kind of a little bit of like a Waiting for Guffman vibe. I don't know, if it's President Christopher Guest kind of thing, but uh, they would do, say, The Sound of Music or something like that, in the town there and put on the shows. And one of the guys that they had a live band that would play, and they would do Elvis songs and stuff. And one of the guys, the guitar player, he played a Strat, and he had really long, cool hair, and he was a local barber in town, ironically. But I was seeing that guy play guitar was one of those things that really got me wanting to play guitar. It just seems so cool. I'm getting a little convoluted here with this, but uh, so yes, my mom. But other than that, like my dad and our other brother, are the complete opposite, none of the arts side at all.
Did you, I mean, were there any bands or types of music that really got your interest at a young age that besides, seeing your brother on TV and all that, what about you musically? I mean, what attracted you to it?
I mean, I remember radio stuff. I remember hearing, I have distinct memories of hearing like John Lennon on the radio. You know, I have a distinct memory of noticing uh, that slapback vocal sound. And I remember kind of everybody that, oh wow, that sounds like, that Sam Phillips stuff.
Hmm.
You'd have the slapback like that, Blue Moon by Elvis, that recording of that to me is still one of the coolest recordings ever made. I mean, he invented that sound. It's crazy. I just always, I've always loved a good 3 minute song. I've always just loved
Me
a good,
too.
a good crafted chorus, and I always noticed that, you know. Um, I remember, like John Cougar, when he was John Cougar, stuff like that, like jumped out to me. I remember when I was a kid. I'm
That
sure there's
makes sense.
a lot of people, but that music for some reason really spoke to me.
Did you
And
start
then,
playing?
you get into metal and all that
Uh,
stuff, and you get into punk rock and stuff. Like I got into skateboarding when I was a kid because I realized that I wasn't going to be on the football team and stuff, so I went the other way. And it was not normal there in West Point. We were got into Black Flag and Dead Kennedys and this kind of stuff, and we were felt like a real outsider down there because it just was not normal or heard of. But it kind of went along with the skateboarding culture. Started reading like Thrasher magazine and stuff, and that's how I found out about like Metallica was their early days. Were advertised in those magazines. You found out about those bands like that, so went off on those kicks. The
Wow, I
Clash,
wasn't expecting to
like
hear
that.
that from you. I wasn't
You
expecting to
know,
hear this from you. I got to be honest. After
yeah,
listening to your music, were there venues that you could go see punk and hardcore bands if they were coming through
no,
town? No
no.
venues.
We made a venue. But my first band, we rented out a theater in Aberdeen, Mississippi, and we put on a festival. I mean, we were kids, man. We were probably 14, 15 years old and rented out this theater and put on this show. We called it the Headbangers Ball. We had just our friends' bands playing. We sold tickets and we got it on the radio and stuff and put flyers up everywhere. And we made things happen like that and made kind of a scene that just did not exist. Nobody was in a band,
So,
but
were you playing in a punk band? Was
yes.
the band
Well,
really?
we would do, I remember in like at the seventh grade high school dance, we played some Sex Pistols songs and stuff, on stage. But to me, those songs you listen to those songs now, I mean, they're very well crafted, especially
Oh
Sex
yeah.
Pistols. The record sounds incredible. At the core, they're amped up Buddy Holly songs to me almost, in a sense. So I was attracted to that and played. So yeah, we did play those songs, but then we'd play an Eagles song, you know. Yeah, so it kind of be just whatever was grooving, you
What
know.
was the name of your band that you were in at that
The
time?
first band I had was called Aces High.
Aces High.
Yeah.
So were there a lot of bands? I imagine because you didn't like, far as I know, I don't know much about your history before Invisible Lines, the album you put out in 2020. Was there other bands? Did you release any other material before that?
You talking about before Invisible Lines?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, when I moved to Austin, um, went through a couple of bands with some friends and stuff, and then I got out of doing bands, and I really started to focus. I got into recording when I was really young, like geeking out with 4 tracks and whatever I could cobble together. You know, I was always fascinated by the art of record making on sounds and tones and things. And after a few bands that came and went in Austin, I got the first little digital 8-track rolling recorder and just hold up. I was living in a house with like 6 dudes, you know, just a party house. And I was like, I'm going to sit in this my bedroom back and had a drum kit and a guitar amp and stuff. And I just geeked out on that recorder for like a year and a half and recorded like 30 songs, playing all the instruments and stuff. And that kind of led to building a small studio there in a rental house there, which everybody told me was a horrible idea, but I did it anyway, and ended up recording a lot of albums for different bands and stuff there in Austin. This is like late '90s, early 2000s, and I took a lot of those songs I had done by myself, and I didn't know if they were any good or not, but some people heard them that I thought they were a lot cooler than I was, and they thought that they were pretty good. It's like, well, shit, maybe I should get a band going with this, And a buddy of mine from Mississippi had moved out. He was a great drummer and harmony singer, and we started a band called Moonlight Towers, and we ended up making 5 albums
Oh,
over
wow.
over we had a real good thing going in Austin there. We toured a lot. Had a big hit with Little Steven, Underground Garage, on our 2011 album. They still play the shit out of it. About 3 or 4 songs off that record.
So was it a garage rock band? Because I
No,
wasn't familiar with
this was way more, not too far off from what I'm doing now, but a little more amped up, louder. I mean, this was a rock and roll band. Uh, More akin to kind of Big Star,
mhm.
uh, Neil Youngy, Crazy Horsey, just power pop, more kind of stuff. But
Nice.
melodically, I mean, I always feel like songs, you can write a 3-minute folk song, but put it through a couple of Fender Vibroluxes and crank them up and play it loud, and now you've got a rock song. Or put a pedal steel on it with acoustic, and now you've got a honky tonk song. I mean, the songs are the song. That's how I see it, at least. I mean, yes, there's nuance involved, but that band was presented more as a power pop, rock band.
Now, when
Different.
was it that you moved to Austin, actually?
1994.
Yeah, you see, I used to go to Austin a lot. Uh, I don't think I've been there since the 90s, actually. And it was a lot different of a town than it is now, from what I
Man,
understand.
it was when I moved there, it kind of felt like I equated it to like a Birmingham, Alabama, or something like a big college town that had some city vibes. I
Yeah.
haven't been to Birmingham in a while, so I don't know what it's like now. But and I moved there. The only reason I moved, I'd never been there. I didn't know anybody there. I knew nothing about it. My brother, in Blind Melon, had told me they had played there, and he goes, Austin was pretty cool." And I was like, "Huh, all right. Well, I'm just gonna go there." I mean, I had no plan, no nothing. But I just knew, I'd watched what he did, like as soon as he got out of high school, they were like, "We're moving to LA. We're gonna start a band." Him and Brad from the band, and they went out there, and after a while, they met Shannon Hoon, and that band was formed, and it happened pretty quick. But So I was like, well, I'm just going to go do that, but I'll just do it in Austin, you know?
It's worked out for you because you got a studio, which we'll talk about in a little while. Um, so you've watched the city change quite a bit because when I was there, and it was a different kind of place from what people tell me. I had Chris Gates on not too long ago. I don't know if you know Chris from the Big Boys and
Uh-uh.
other Austin bands. He's an Austin
I
guy.
know
We
the
talked.
band, but I don't know him, yeah.
Yeah, he's still living down there. We were talking about the changes. I told him in 1991 I worked on a movie in Pflugerville, and
Oh,
I
yeah?
remember going there in the morning, and you'd see the sign. It said Pflugerville, population 945. And years later, like 20 years later, whatever, I decided to look it up, and I looked it up recently, and there's like 50,000 people living there. I'm like, how the fuck did that happen? How did it go
Yeah.
from like a small little farm place to like a huge, not a city, but close.
Well, it's all connected. I mean, if you drive, it's like my daughter goes to college at Georgetown now, and it's like Austin, Round Rock, Georgetown, Pflugerville, and it's all pretty much just one city. The one that really trips me out is, in between Austin and San Antonio, which I love San Antonio, it's almost just like a mega city now. It feels like it's populated almost the whole way to San Antonio, or it used to feel like, there was a little bit of countryside along there, but now it's just like mega, you know, future city,
Yeah, I
through
used to
that whole
go
part.
when I worked with labels. I used to go to all four of the Texas, the big four, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, all the time. And Austin was always my favorite, but I liked San Antonio too. That was a pretty cool
Yeah.
place as well. Good food, real good
Yeah,
food.
killer vibe there.
Yeah.
I love the little Riverwalk hang.
Oh yeah, I stayed on that
Beautiful.
Marriott on the Riverwalk once. That was
I know,
great.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Uh, okay, I'm sorry, I got off the track here. I'm good. I'm famous for that. So when did you decide? I mean, did the studio, I imagine, came um before you put your first solo record out. So when did that all happen? I know you released Invisible Lines during 2020, but what was the time that led up to that?
Well, like I said, I had that rental house I was living in Austin. I built a little studio there in the garage and made tons of albums there over the 5 or 6 year period, and just kind of met a lot of people and cut my teeth. Being thrown, I say, is thrown in the fire, not really know what I'm doing, but just kind of pretending like I did and going for it. And so then they sold that house, and I had to get out of there, which means the studio went away, and I ended up getting a place over in East Austin, and this producer guy, Steven Doster, that I've been working with, he and I decided to put a studio together, and we had a way to build a bigger studio, but they're in my backyard, and that's what we did. And it's still going since 2007.
Oh, that long.
I've
Wow.
made I've made I've recorded, I don't know how many bands I've recorded and produced and mixed and whatever out of there. Um, and yeah, it's just been an organic process for me as far as building up the studio. It's just stuff that I've just collected over the last however long, gear and everything. It's just kind of turned into this monstrosity that it is now. So I've always kind of, the recording side and the playing and all that, it all kind of goes as one to me. I feel like I hear tones tell stories to me. It's like, what snare sound do I choose on this song, or for me, that makes it like, it gives it a vibe and a feel of even what kind of music it is, like where I'm at aesthetically. So the recording part is just as much part of the presentation, writing or performing live. It's all one thing to me, how I see it. So I love all parts of it, you
Did
know.
you start with a tape machine or did you just go right
Oh,
into
yeah.
the digital age?
No, I am a tape machine. I mean, where to land it. All mixed to half-inch tape. I did not record to 2-inch. Invisible Lines, I did record to 2-inch. I'm pretty sure
I
for 20.
love those 2-inch machines,
I mean,
man.
I
Those,
use it all the time. Like, I just did the new Uncle Lucius record on the 2-inch machine. I love recording on them, just turning off the computer. Uh, Now I'll dump it over into Pro Tools once I track everything, do my editing and stuff, and then I'm mixing on the console, usually back to half-inch tape. It's just how I do it, how I've always done it. I mean, I can do fully digital as well, and it sounds really good. I just find the tape a little more unpredictable and a little more exciting. You don't know if
wow.
it's,
I
but
love that.
I am a, I'm definitely a nerd about, like, I know that some people are like, oh, let's just put it on the tape and man, it's going to make it sound, messed up or whatever. I don't really look at it like I like calibrate my machines. I'm a real geek about making sure the machines are set up properly, and I'm trying to get the best sound out of them. It naturally does its thing, and what it does is kind of if you mix through a half-inch, it's just kind of like this overall smoothing, hazy effect. I just feel like it's almost how you perceive it in your brain, how you hear it, because it's not bits, of information. If you look at the waveforms after you hit the tape, it looks like this rather than like this, So
I
it
love
just
tape.
honestly, it just makes my job easy. It makes it sound like I'm better at what I do because it just naturally kind of does this compression thing, that I think sounds really organic, especially for the music I'm doing.
Couple of
It
the
just doesn't feel
studio,
right until I hit it. It's like it doesn't sound done yet.
yeah.
It's sort of hot. The smooths over. Like if you have a tambourine that's up there and kind of maybe a little piercing, it's going to take care of that for you. You know.
A couple of the studios that I frequently go to in the Boston area still have 2-inch machines, and I love them. A lot of people just want to record their drums on the 2-inch because the
Yeah.
drums sound good, and yeah, I'm old school in that way. So I'm happy to hear your vibe on that for sure.
Yeah.
Plus, your
A lot of times we'll cut basics to the tape machine. Drums and bass if we have a live band playing or whatever's in the room and transfer it over, and then any of the sugar and spice stuff will be recorded in Pro Tools. But I'm always going back through my console. I'm a big proponent of that. I don't like sitting there messing around with the mouse or whatever when I'm mixing. To me, it's more of like a hands-on thing. I wish that it sure would make my life easier if I got better at doing it all on the computer because, there's some advantages to it. But for me, it's faster doing it I'm just so used to it, It's
yeah.
just, I've done it. And it's almost like playing a piano, you're doing several things at once, rather than, oh, I'm doing this little thing. Anyway, yeah. This is more
Did
fun.
uh,
I feel less
you
like
know
a secretary, you know.
you put out Invisible Lines in 2020 and then the pandemic hit. Did that
Yeah.
hurt or help the release? I know that's a stupid question, but some people ended up, I did hear that you ended up writing a lot during the pandemic. Were you able to promote the Invisible Lines record the way you wanted to, or did that get all
Uh,
sidetracked?
I tried. I did go tour over in the UK. Me in a suitcase full of vinyl and a couple of suits and guitar. I did a little 2-week tour over there and did some stuff around the Southeast before it happened. Because, that was in like March.
Yeah.
Had a little bit of time there to do some promo stuff, but then I had a really good tour booked, and it all got canceled, like everybody else, and it's a bummer. And then I'm like, well, shit, what do I do? And you start trying to figure stuff out, Next thing you know, I'm doing dadgum live streams and stuff and trying to figure that out. And I leaned into that, I decided, I was like, well, there's two roads I can take here. I can just stop, and not do anything, and or I can try to use this time to figure out some new things. I don't know, So I went that way and really got into I really got into playing acoustic guitar a lot and just writing a lot of songs, more than I'd ever done in my life by far. Which that new album, that's where all those came from.
Exactly. That's what I read. And You definitely, you talked about how much you were able to write more. This is a pretty commercial record, the new one.
Is it?
I think it is. Well, I mean,
Oh,
more, I mean, I don't, you can call it whatever you want as far as genres go, Americana, whatever. To me, it's like a singer-songwriter, but with a band, and the good organ. You use the keyboards a lot in the songs, and I like that. Is that what you were going for in the studio? Did it come out exactly the way you wanted it, or did you have to keep working on it?
man. Okay, so the difference in this album than any way I've ever done it with my music, usually I'm cutting with the band in the studio. You know what I mean? You get the guys in there, you're playing. I did not do this record that way at all. It was completely opposite. And the reason is I couldn't have everybody in the studio when I was doing this because of pandemic and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to have a good old-fashioned super spreader in there, you know. So because I had been playing these songs by myself so much and I had written them in that way, I knew that they worked that way. And I had been playing them on these live streams I was doing weekly and kind of getting a vibe about, hey, what do you think about this? I had some legitimate feedback on a lot of these songs. I kind of knew which ones were connecting, you know. And I was sitting on about 20 or 30 songs that I had, that I was going to record. And so what I did is I sat there and I made a loop of a groove that I liked, and I would just cut it with a guitar and voice live. And once I had that, where it's like, okay, my thing I was saying is somebody came in here and put a gun to my head and said, you have to release this right now. Are you okay with this? Just guitar and voice. Like I felt good about that performance. Because for me, the vocals are the thing that, will keep me up at night more than anything.
Right.
And so I got him to that point, and then I was like, okay, what do I want to bring to this? You know, so the first thing I did is brought in George Duran on drums, and we spent a day of him cutting drums on these songs, and we really spent a lot of time like, okay, let's try this snare on this. All right, we're going to deaden this with tea towels on this song. And he would bring in different cymbals, and we just really nerded out on the tones. And so he laid down drums on every song and percussion. We just knocked it out in a day. But see, everybody's playing to the finished song. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh, these are scratch vocals and we'll come back. No, this is the vibe, And so then I just added the bass, and my goal was to, and then after the bass, I added keyboards. Johnny from Uncle Lucius, and a great solo artist. He goes by Sleepy John. Uh, and he did the organ like Hammond. We did some synth on some stuff, a lot of grand piano, Early Rhodes, stuff like that. We just
It's a
spent a day
really
doing.
good sounding record.
Yeah, he put accordion on there on a couple of tracks. And then Doug Strahan came in and did guitars, electrics. He sang some harmonies, and Betty Sue came in and did harmonies. Anyway, yeah, I added these things. But everything I was kind of trying to be careful about, because it's easy, like, oh, let's layer guitars. So it sounds big and huge and this. And I was kind of fighting against every instinct that I have. It's like, no, I'm going to keep it like really open and stripped down sounding, like intimate sounding, you know. I feel like, I always say it's kind of like the AC/DC, like Back in Black effect. It's like when you listen to that record, it sounds so huge and beautiful and deep. It's two guitars, bass, and drums. There's not even a lot of distortion on those
Yeah.
guitars to it. And it sounds bigger than any other records where you might layer 15 guitars on everything, It's because there's air, there's depth of field in it. And so I was trying to keep that vibe with this album. It's like, okay, so there's just going to be one guitar, and then I'll have my guitar, and then there's the keyboards, and then, and every now and then you add a little atmosphere or something, but um, no vocal trickery at all. No, it's also like I really love the sound of like Neil Young Tonight's the Night, where it's really raw, and I didn't quite go that raw, but there's no doubled vocals, any of that kind of stuff, no trickery. It's just that's how I did it. and just I
S-
just got it where I felt good about the performance, you know.
I
So
haven't heard about too many people that record, like a guitar and a vocal and then record everything else. That's kind of the reverse way that a lot of people do it. But I have heard that, and it seems like it's a good direction
yeah,
to go
I'm
in.
already 9 songs into the next one the same
Wow.
way because I can knock it out. It's like I play a lot solo, you know, and so I'm writing songs that I know will work that way, and it has to work that way for what I'm doing, and so I feel like the that's the thing, and everything else I'm trying to complement that. So if recording it backwards like that, at least for right now, I'm really digging it because I can just sit in there and knock it out. I'll knock out I'll knock out a whole like the nine did. I mean, I just knocked it out in like a day and a half, and it's done. So now when I get back to Austin, we're going to add some drums on some of that stuff and start building out it again. I want to start more consistently releasing stuff. I'll probably plop out an EP here pretty quick. It's my plan.
Sounds like, like a few other people I know that are musicians, that the pandemic actually helped some people with their craft, because you had more time to
Yeah,
spend on it. It seems like
totally.
that's what might have happened with you.
I think that it did. I think that makes you realize, how precious time is, and you better use it while you can. I certainly ain't getting any younger, and I'm out here, you know. But I love that part of it, and like last night in Baton Rouge, just had this great show, and when people connect with those songs live and they come up and talk to you afterwards, that's what you're going for here. I'm not playing for myself, but I'm not just playing myself and the cat. I mean, you want people to feel your music. I used to be scared to say things like that. It's like, oh no, it's all about my. Nah, fuck that.
Well, it's interesting. This is a good segue because your songs, it seems to me like a very personal kind of record in some way. Someday I Will See You is one of my favorites. And, I listen to these songs and I hear like a personal story going on here. I imagine you write a lot more out of emotion than you do force. Would you say that's pretty accurate?
There are some, yeah, that's definitely one of those. That's one of those songs the gist of it may come in a moment of maybe sometimes even emotional panic, or something's happening in my life, and I think a lot of people feel that though, it's not certainly not just me. So I want to capture those moments, as painful as they might be sometimes, and I'll adjust some things here and there with the little time and space. Some words may change, but.
I'm also,
If something hits me, I'm gonna get it. Like I'm driving yesterday and I had a few things hit me, and I immediately am talking into my phone and recording those ideas, just a lyric phrase or something, and that will spawn a whole song. It's just a feeling or a thought, rather than a specific moment. You know what I mean?
yeah, like think the other song that I wrote down here, Wake Up With You in the Morning, very, very personal song. It seems like a very personal song to me. The one I wanted to ask you about a couple of these songs. I hope you don't mind.
Of course.
Too Fast for Me. What was on your mind when you wrote that one?
Man, that was written. That was that was written when everything was feeling like mega apocalyptic.
Mm.
It was like right in the middle of all the lockdown, and nobody knew what, it was like very, very movie, like what's going to happen. I remember I was hearing stuff about the National Guard was going to be called in, and they were shutting down all the whole interstates and everything, and I just remember like I was and I heard that like one of my favorite restaurants of all times had in Austin had closed down, and just all this crazy. It seemed really really crazy at the time, uh, and it felt like everything was in slow motion. And I don't know, it was just a feeling of I'm trying to even think of some of the words of that one now that I'm sitting here, but it was just a feeling of it felt like things were kind of spinning out of control, but I was kind of sitting still, but everything else was going like this, but it felt like me personally, life was moving really slowly. I don't know. It's tough to put in the words, but yeah, that's
The, Well, I did take one of your lines out of one of your songs here, and I imagine I'm not saying if I was sitting there and I wanted to come up with the album title, this would have happened to me too. But when I heard, I guess I know what it's like to fly with nowhere to land, I
yeah,
thought that was a great line. I was like, that should be the name of the album, you
yeah,
know? And
yeah, yeah.
is that what happened?
The Nowhere to Land title
Yeah.
for the album. Um, okay, so how that happened was I was trying to come up with an album title, and at that point, I'm looking to maybe some outside people to kind of chime in on this a little bit because it's real easy to get bubbled up in this stuff.
When you're in a bubble.
Well, compounded on the fact that it still was a little pandemic-y when I was doing some of this, and I was playing the album when I thought it was done for my daughter, and I really trust her musical instinct. I like how she hears music, how she talks about it. And so I was like, "Can you help me come up with a sequence for this?" You know? And I mean, I had a completely different sequence, and we listened. And she's like, "You should try this one here and this." And it's like, "That's good enough for me." You need some outside
Yeah.
people that you trust in there on that. And I was like, "What should I call it?" And I got to come up with an album title. And I had some ideas. She goes, "Why don't you call it Nowhere to Land? Like it's a song." She really likes that song. And I was like,
What's your daughter's name? Because she deserves a plug for this.
her name is Scarlett.
Well, that's really cool because that's what I was thinking too. I mean, the album was already named when I listened to it, but when I
Yeah.
heard that, I was like, Nowhere to Land. I mean, it's a great
Yeah,
title.
it just seemed to fit the overall arc of the album, you know. She said it, and I was like, "That's it." I didn't think much about it, just did it.
Scarlet New.
Yeah, which is the I think thinking too much can be the great enemy of any of this stuff. You gotta just I almost just have to like tell myself. I mean, my mantra is just like, "Fuck it, just do it, just."
I think I know the answer to this next question, but I'll ask you anyways. Do you write all the music and lyrics by yourself, or do you bring in, do you have songwriting partners at all? I'm thinking that you're going to say you do it all yourself, but that's just a guess.
Um, I'll tell you, on these songs, I was in this 99% yes. Uh, I mean, I wrote all of these and everything about it. But when any of the musicians I brought in, I don't say anything. I'm just like, all right. The, I bring people in that I like what they do, and I want them to bring their vibe. I may have an idea, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to play the track, and they've already listened to it and just see what happens. And most of the time, it's like, I love what they do. I might have an idea here and there that, hey, man, that was a great hook. Let's repeat that. It's maybe some little thing they did. But as far as the writing, yeah, I was in this doing this song group with some buddies where we had to turn in a song every week,
Ooh,
no matter what. By Thursday at midnight, you got to turn in a song. And several of these came from that. And there would also be feedback, you know. And so I definitely, had some lyric tweaks and stuff that maybe were some suggestions, along some of the, I don't remember exactly what. But but yeah, does that answer it?
yeah, yes, it
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
But I got to ask you a follow-up to that. Are you the same way when you record other people? Do you just let them do their thing and just worry about getting the technical part right? Or do you ever, well, that arrangement or this, or do you do that when you're recording bands?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's all over the board. It's band and project dependent. It also is what is the role in this, If I'm hired as just, hey, just record this band, maybe they have a producer they're bringing in. So maybe I'm just
Engineer.
listening off here, which I actually like that, but there's a little less pressure. But there's also projects that I take on where like they give me an iPhone demo and they want to make this into an album, So I'm like, I'm getting the musicians together. I'm I'm playing all the guitar. I'm helping them write a bridge that isn't there. I'm suggesting that. I'm singing harmonies. I'm helping maybe tweak a lyric or a melody, like whatever it takes. And that takes a lot out of me, and I'm kind of doing a little less of those.
But you get the production credit, right?
Oh, yes.
Good.
Doing a little less of those because you mentioned that we keep bringing up the pandemic thing, but it is a massive thing that happened to all of us. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a global, once in a lifetime event, maybe for a lot of us.
we hope.
Yeah. So when when all the studio work just plummeted and was gone, just like that, you know, it made me kind of realize, it was like, man, I'm spending 6, 7 days a week working on everybody else's music, you know, and you only have so much energy, and
Whoops.